Well, good morning. Day 13, Saturday, today. And today is going to be an interesting one. Nothing was coming up for me, and I was really looking for a subject last night and when I woke up. And then I thought no, this is not working. I'm just going to sit there. And if I need to be in silent, I need to be in silent. And then there was this explosion of this topic around spirituality that came up. And kind of my whole journey and my exploration on this topic came by, and how I changed my view upon things, or explored that view. That all came by at once. So I'm kind of afraid it's going to be a very messy session, because I don't know how it will come through now, but let's see what happens. And I call this session today Spirituality because I've consciously and not just consciously, I'm in my experience, spirituality and mastering the art of living is the same. And it hasn't been always like that for me. But soon it was. And then, well, lots happened after that. When I was young, I used to play a little game with myself. And that game was about using words for different things. Using different words for things. So I always started with a tree. And I always questioned myself, why do we call a tree a tree? What would happen if we call a tree a car or a house? Would a tree appear differently to me? And so I went through all these different ways of playing with words and objects. And I noticed it was so extremely difficult to call a tree a house. Because in my mind and in my belief system, it didn't make sense to call it a house. Well, I could argue with it was a house for an animal. But obviously that was not what I was looking for. And it definitely didn't turn into a car, because I had an idea of what a car was. And then I got back to the same question again and again: why is a tree called a tree? And I was too young to have a lot of knowledge about languages, or about concepts, or about agreements we make. It's kind of an agreement we make, isn't it? When we use a language, we kind of agree that a tree is a tree. And that in itself is a very innocent agreement. But that agreement applies to any belief system that we believe to be true. And I talked many times about belief systems, I know. But it's so interesting to explore a belief system, because that's really the only thing to take away from these 99 days, is to just open up to belief systems. Like I did when I was young, and opening up to the belief system that a tree was a tree. And what was a tree then? Well, a tree is a thing with branches and leaves, and it can be huge and it can be small and it can be thin, and it's growing in nature or it's growing in the garden, etc., etc. I was describing the visualization of a tree, or the visual of a tree. So what I actually found out, that what we see is what we believe. And what we don't see, we have a hard time believing. And if everything is energy, even the table in your house is energy, the brick your house is made of is energy. Every matter is energy. It's just vibrating at a different frequency. So stones and bricks and the more solid things that appear to us, it's more solid matters, are energies, very little, tiny particles vibrating at a different frequencies than, for instance, a radio frequency that we cannot see. That was another thing that puzzled me forever. How does a radio work? How does sound work? I could literally look at the radio and think, like, where is this coming from? I cannot see it, but how can I hear it? Or how can I talk to someone over the phone and have a conversation who's on the other side of the world? But if we're taught long enough it is like that, if we tell children it is like that, we believe it to be true. So are we actually completely lost as humans? Are we completely depending upon belief systems? Don't we know what truth is? Well, philosophically speaking, to me, in essence, we don't know what truth is. We now in this world are opening up to new insights in science. And we've now even able to see the black hole. You probably have seen it this week. We can see the black hole. And because we can see it, science is so happy because it can be taken as another information of truth. So what I learned in my journey on spirituality is that the only truth there is your own body, your own sensing system. You can only sense if something is truth for you in that moment. And even that already is a tricky one. Because for once we're not able to really sense everything. Because we just simply didn't learn it that way. And for some people it's more easy than for other people. They kind of, you could say, have more talent to sense. Or are wired differently. But in the essence, we all have the same abilities within us to sense. I will believe. Or I at least would like to believe, because where does otherwise this inner knowing come from? This inner knowing is reflected as kind of an approval. So this inner knowing is where the body doesn't contract, where the body doesn't go into an anxiety or a nervousness. It almost just relaxes into that moment. You have this inner knowing. And then immediately the contraction can come in, because then you question from the mind whether this new perspective can really be true to you. And I've learned, and if I watched my journey, that these beliefs about perspectives, or the beliefs about beliefs, have changed. I haven't always been, in the past 7 years, I couldn't take in everything at once. I had to explore it, I had to experience it, I had to find out what in that was a truth for me. What in that was really felt like a knowing. And I know there were moments when I knew I was just not ready to open up to that perspective. And that was frustrating. Because even if there was a sense of knowing, it was so briefly, it was so short, that immediately resistance came up, like, this can't be true. Especially in the beginning, when I had this first experience of awakening, the only message I got from the person I was with was like, it's all energy, and everything is just a story. And because it's all energy, you might probably have shifted through a lot of layers and opened up to a different field of awareness, or a different, you could say that an awakening experience is kind of completely opening up to new perspectives. So you're literally feeling and seeing. It was both. I could also, and even smelling everything around me just felt differently for 3 months. It felt differently within me, like there was pure love. I could just love everything I saw, whether it was a tree, whether it was a house, whether it was a brick, whether it was a person. I didn't know anything. There was just pure love. And everything looked really bright and colorful and very intense. Like, I don't know if you have had eyes with less good sight, and then you put on glasses and everything looks extremely bright. So all colors were more intense, and all smells were more intense, and everything was just very vivid, very alive. But then came back to the reality, like, everything is energy? Really? I'm looking here at the table. That cannot be energy. It's as solid as a brick. I mean, it's as solid as wood. It's solid. I could believe that a thought is energy. Yes, that was easy. I could also see myself creating stories. That was also easy. I couldn't let go of them. That was difficult. Because I was my story. Even my awakening experience was my story. That was me having had something extraordinary. That's a very tricky thing about spirituality. They kind of put it on a pedestal, like, if you've had this awakening experience, you're really like, well, something special. But it's not, because we don't We probably don't all experience it like that. If you change your perspectives and you gradually change it over a period of 3 or 5 years, or 10 years, or a whole lifetime, but you can really look differently at things and feel differently about things, and relationships appear differently to you than it did in the past, it's an awakening. And the only common descriptions about awakening is that kind of everyone shares, that it feels like a very happy, blissful, loving, and then not loving like you love one person, but like an unconditional love with a capital L. Like you're in a field of love where there's no conditions, where there's no judgment. And that creates a huge feeling of happiness. And that's what everyone shares in the same way, who's had an experience like this, or who's living in a higher, enlightened level of consciousness. So then I thought you could even argue, like, if I give a lot of belief systems that feel negative, like, well, war is a great thing, and we should all kill each other, and why do we make such a fuss about death? It's just another difference in state of being. So these are all negative belief systems, if you could just easily put it like that. But those belief systems don't feel as a truth to us. There's no, at least I haven't experienced a knowing within me like that's a good thing to do, to kill someone. So you could say that every human being or every living organism is looking for happiness, in the sense that it wants to have a balanced and free and peaceful state of living, state of being. So back to, why do I call this mastering the art of living? Because going on a spiritual path, you tend to end up being the seeker. So you tend to seek for this repeat of this experience I once had, or you haven't had one and you've read about it and you want to have one. Because having this awakening experience seems like this goal to achieve. And then the goal itself gets all the attention. Like, I want to have this pure bliss experience, because it seems everyone around me who has it looks so happy and awesome, and it must be really like another achievement in life. Or even like, then I will be a better person, or I can be something that someone else is not. So you go into comparison. And unfortunately, you cannot take a pill for this. Well, from a Matrix perspective, you could take a pill. If you look at the movie The Matrix, which can well be seen as a documentary of life. But that's another topic, I guess. But there's not such a thing as a pill to happiness. Well, drugs can give you that sense for a brief moment. And I recently heard a friend of mine having a DMT experience, and it was really, really intense and very pure awakening up to a new perspective, a new truth, a new reality, a new way of looking at life and how life is created and what the sense of a human is. So yes, you can have that experience, and you can even create it if you like. If your mind is not too strong, and you can really surrender to the drug experience from a positive attitude and openness, then those experiences can be amazing. I had it with ayahuasca, and it's quite interesting. And it's also interesting how strong the mind still is going through that night of ayahuasca, because it's a long night. In that sense, DMT is easier because it's only 10 minutes. But having had awakening experience or not, being enlightened or not, how does it appear in daily life? How do you relate to your family? Do you hold any resentment to anyone? Especially look at relationships. If there's still any resentment, any grudge, any whatever it is, or to life itself, or to your body because you have a chronic ailment, or you have repetitive periods of pain, what does that tell you? How do you deal with these relationships who are out of balance? Are you still as awakened? Are you still being able to hold that frequency of bliss and happiness and unconditional love toward that situation, towards your own body, towards your own relationship with someone that's painful to you, or towards something in the news that really is difficult for you to grasp because it creates pain within you, or anger or frustration? How do you deal with that? That to me is spirituality. Opening up to new perspectives, being completely honest with yourself at every level. Every signal that your body gives you, every signal that your heart gives you, every thought that comes up. Be completely honest and explore it and see if you can change the perspective on it. See if you can release that perspective that holds it in place. That belief system that holds it in place. So you could also say that spirituality is just being in pure balance. Ultimately, if you want to reach this state of high frequency on a more constant basis, feeling this feeling of happiness and peacefulness on a more constant basis, or more frequent in your daily life, it's about balance. It's like finding this tuning fork, so kind of this vertical line within you that's kind of, or everything is aligned and into flow. So nothing is blocking the way, nothing is blocking the life energy that the Tantra is talking about. And the Kundalini energy that is pure flowing through your body system. When there's nothing in the way, when there's nothing blocking that energy, then automatically also your heart area, your heart chakra is completely open. Then that's actually the balance we're looking for. And some of the teachers called it an emotional guiding system, and that helped me a lot. Like, when do I get out of balance? When there's something that happens in my life takes me out of balance. And how far is that stretch? How long am I out of balance? How long am I living in that more a situation which gives more tension, which gives less happy feeling, a less peaceful feeling? How long am I holding on to that? And how easy can I go back to it? And I've noticed over the years that what's actually happening, I'm not experiencing those. Well, I've had another of that awakening experience, but not as intense as the first one. But it's more like every time I'm connecting to this alignment, this pure balance, like my system feels like it's all aligned at once. And I more easily get back to that core base. And that way, so I sometimes can really be out of balance and can. Only 2 nights ago, I was completely overwhelmed with feelings of anger and blame and jealousy and frustration, and it came out of nowhere. I was in bed and my whole body was vibrating, and there was so much tension around my heart. And I couldn't understand what just happened. But if we're all frequencies, if we're all energies, it might not have nothing to do with me. I might have picked it up somewhere. Because if we lose the concept of separation between humans, but we're all fields of energy. And we all live in this conscious field of energy. And lots of different energies are popping up every time. But getting from that state of feeling so differently in that moment, going back to balance is where it's all about. And I went wrong again. I took it personally. I made a story out of it. Because I was looking for an explanation. I thought, like, what the hell is happening here? And then something came up and I connected that story with my feelings, and I projected it on someone else. And even though it might not have been my personal past experience, that moment where this all exploded, these feelings of anger and frustration and blame, I still sense it as something personal because I sense it with my body, so I still feel it as personal. I just shouldn't take it and link it to my personal stories. I can only ask what's needed to be seen here, because if it's relevant to be seen, whether it's for me or for this planet, because it needs to be released, and that's the job to be done at that moment. So spirituality to me is not seeking bliss or seeking happiness as such. It's becoming aware that where life takes you out of this happiness. And every human wants to be happy. If you question anyone on this planet, and you go through all the layers of resistance, ultimately everyone wants to be happy. Happy in the definition, because it's another word we use as a container. Happy that feels like in balance with yourself at that moment, in pure balance. Like this peacefulness, like it's all good. It's all perfect. So in the absolute sense, spirituality and this wanting for happiness is not a journey. It's always there. You know, that exercise we had, like just letting go everything 12 times a day. Just dive within this moment of complete surrender. Or this brief moment that everything is okay. And to me, those exercises of going within weren't confirming this happiness at once, not at all. And then I go back to it. You need to practice. You need to practice this different way of sensing. Mm. And looking back at my journey, I did silence retreats and I did spiritual retreats, and I followed those events where you come together with a group with the same intention, and that creates a field. And that's why these retreats are so helpful on your journey, because it lifts you literally in this frequency. So it's much more easier in this field to open up to these new perspectives. And that's why they sometimes can also be addictive for people. They just go on from retreat to retreat because in that week or in those days, they feel more easily open up to this feeling of happiness. And you meet people who are in the same field, they talk the same language, so you also feel seen for what you're looking for. And that makes it less lonely. Because this journey is also judged by many, especially the ones who haven't opened up to it. And I wasn't one of the spiritual seekers who was there already 20 or 30 years ago, and there was no internet, and they just went on their journey to India to find gurus, to listen to their messages and take that in. When I started, I was already helped with the fact that there were stores full of books about it, and many offerings online of teachers you could follow, and YouTube's movies and videos, and retreats you could follow. But it also overwhelmed me, because it overwhelmed me because I had this pressure of, like, I have to be something, or I have to learn something, or I have to become something, and that always kind of had a friction for me. Like, there was one side of it, like I wasn't feeling good enough for it, which was obviously an old one for me. Like, if I don't have this awakening experience so easily again, then obviously I'm not good for this journey. I'm not talented enough to be spiritual. And there were so many other qualities people had, like clairvoyance or clear hearing or whatever you all call it. I didn't have that, I thought. So you kind of, even in that field, you measure yourself with others. And then there was only one thing that was like valuable to me, like, okay, I would like to do something with this for my life and for my environment. If I cannot apply it into my daily life, then this doesn't make sense. I cannot be spiritual 5 days a year and then the rest of the year being my old self again and having these feelings of tension and contraction and unhappiness or whatever disbalance was shown in my life. That cannot be the reason. And I'm not willing to give up my life and become this spiritual seeker and give up everything I had, because I had a family I loved. I have 3 kids and I wanted to find a new way of working. And so there was something within me that really wants to integrate this experience I had 7 years ago in my life. And that was an intense search, really intense. The emotion that comes up now, as you can see. I think it's the emotion of loneliness. And that is gratitude comes over me. That's interesting. I'm just sharing it out loud. So and there's a lot of gratitude towards what life has shown me. And there's a lot of gratitude towards myself to just open up to this. It's so interesting to feel all these different emotions, like kind of one after the other. Um, it started with this intense feeling of loneliness that I experienced, especially during the journey of integration, what I just said when it came up. But also it was this loneliness earlier in my life, or has been with me all my life. And when I'm in alignment with myself, what I explained earlier, then it's completely gone. It's completely gone. But somewhere it's still in my system, or it's in a collective system even, I think. And I'm sensitive to it because I know this feeling is so familiar to me. So I easily relate to it. And then there's feelings of gratitude and humbleness and came after that. And it was really, I think they're all different flavors of love, kind of. Because what is love actually? And I guess I'm lucky. Sorry. I guess I'm lucky that I have a system that releases emotion easily. I've always been a good crier. That's just one way of releasing. There are many different ways of releasing, but it immediately releases the tension that was when I felt this loneliness. And when I say I have these waves of emotions, I'm not back yet to how I felt earlier in this session. So there's still emotions coming up in my system. But weirdly enough, I cannot touch into that sense of loneliness right now. I try, but I can't. And for you just to share what I physically did when it happened, I just literally asked my heart to open. I just kind of send a request, or so I always start with just asking myself to open up. Just open up, be vulnerable, let it all in. And luckily enough, I feel safe enough to be here in front of this camera. And there was a moment like, oh my God, what am I doing now? Am I gonna shut off? Am I gonna end this stream? And I thought, why? Why should I do that? But it was only a split second. And then I could just, then that happened actually before the emotion really came through. So this old pattern, like you cannot show your yourself in every way. You have to be something, or you have to show up well or good or whatever, or happy. So then I felt this wave of loneliness coming over me. And that's the moment where I just felt like I'm going to completely dive in. Just open up and see what happens. It's almost like I feel like when you have this emotion, your body gets kind of in this fight-flight state. Like all the tension is built up and like you're being attacked by something. And I think that's literally what the body is doing. It's just protecting itself, like from something that feels threatening coming in. Now I can just kind of like, okay, the army is just withdrawing. They're going back to their normal. All the cells are releasing. It's like, it's really funny to sense. I slowly feel this tension just going out of my stomach. I don't know what the area is called, just where your solar plexus is. So your higher stomach. And you could sense that or at least my butt was really holding tension, like it was this reaction of I have to run, this fight-flight reaction. And I can sense it. I literally have to tell myself to relax. And then I relax. Okay. It helps. At least it helps for me to just give yourself little orders. And this feeling of gratitude is very like a warm bath. Almost make me feel like I'm going to blush or something. Jason Silva, one of the persons I follow online, calls this a warm feather bath. It's nice. I like that expression. A bed of feathers. It feels like that, like you can let yourself go, dive into. Well, it's a bit longer session due to the unexpected end, I guess. Well, not much more to be said. For now, I wish you a beautiful day. Much of love. See you tomorrow.